Have you ever noticed how you promise yourself that you will finally change your behavior, that this time things will be different, and you will not fall into the same traps again, and yet somehow, after a few days or weeks, you find yourself exactly where you started, repeating the same actions, making the same decisions, and feeling the same frustration all over again? The same habits keep showing up in your life, the same decisions seem to control your outcomes, and the same regrets come back to haunt you as if nothing ever really changed, which makes it feel almost like there is an invisible force pulling you back into a cycle you cannot seem to escape. And here comes the uncomfortable question that most people try to avoid asking themselves, which is this: what if the problem is not your lack of discipline, not your lack of motivation, but something much deeper that you have never truly examined or understood? Because the truth is that most people do not repeat their mistakes simply because they are weak or incapable, but because they are following patterns that have been programmed into them over time without them even realizing it. And today you are going to understand exactly why this keeps happening in your life, and more importantly, how you can finally begin to break this cycle that has been holding you back for so long. Think about this for a moment, and be honest with yourself as you do it. How many times have you looked at your own behavior and said to yourself with absolute certainty that this would be the last time you would make that same mistake again? The last time you would procrastinate when you knew you had something important to do, the last time you would reach out to someone who was not good for you, and the last time you would sabotage your own progress even though you knew better. And yet, despite all those promises, it still happens again, almost as if those words meant nothing in the face of something stronger inside you. Why does this keep happening? It is not random, and is not a coincidence. It is a pattern, and patterns do not exist by accident, because they are always being reinforced by something happening beneath the surface of your awareness. Your brain, contrary to what you might believe, is not designed to make you successful or fulfilled, but rather to keep you safe and protected from perceived danger. And here is where the real problem begins, because your brain has a very specific way of interpreting the world around you. It confuses what is familiar with what is safe, even when that familiarity is actually harmful to you. Take a moment to really let that sink in, because it explains more about your behavior than you might expect. Even if something in your life is clearly bad for you, even if it is toxic, draining, or self-destructive, if it feels familiar to your mind, your brain will continue pushing you back toward it again and again. That is why people stay in relationships that hurt them, why they delay pursuing their goals, and why they repeat the same emotional cycles over and over without understanding why they cannot break free. Because deep down, their mind is saying something very simple but very powerful, which is this: at least I know what this feels like. And when it comes to the unknown, to change, to growth, that is where fear starts to appear, because uncertainty feels dangerous to the brain. So what happens is that you go back to what you already know, even when you know it is not good for you, and you do this over and over again without realizing the mechanism behind it. Now let's go even deeper into this, because this is not just about habits or routines that you repeat every day. This is about your identity, the way you see yourself at your core. Most people try to change their behavior on the surface level, but they never truly change how they perceive themselves internally, and that is why their efforts never last for long. If deep down you believe that you are someone who procrastinates, then no matter how hard you try to be productive, you will eventually find your way back to procrastination. If you see yourself as someone who always messes things up or never follows through, then you will unconsciously act in ways that prove that belief to be true. And this does not happen because you consciously want to fail or sabotage yourself, but because your brain is constantly trying to maintain consistency between your identity and your actions. It wants everything you do to match the story you believe about yourself, even when that story is limiting or harmful. So now let me ask you something that requires real honesty. Who do you believe you are when no one else is watching you, when there is no one to impress and no image to maintain? Not the version of yourself that you show to the world, and not the version that you wish you could become one day, but the version that you truly believe you are deep inside. Because that version of you is the one that is controlling your decisions every single day, shaping your actions in ways you may not even notice. And here is where things become even more complicated, because most of these beliefs about yourself were not even consciously created by you. They were installed over time through your experiences, through failures, through things people said to you, and through moments where things did not go the way you expected. And in those moments, your brain formed conclusions about who you are, creating statements like, I am not good at this. I am not disciplined, or I am not enough. From that point forward, you began to live according to that script, repeating behaviors that aligned with those beliefs without even realizing that you were doing it. That is why you keep going back to the same mistakes, because you are not just dealing with habits, you are dealing with a story that has been running in the background of your life. And stories are incredibly powerful because they shape your perception of reality, define your limits, and influence what you believe is possible for you. Now, here is something that most people never fully understand. Your brain will often choose familiar pain over unfamiliar growth because familiar pain feels predictable while growth introduces uncertainty. And uncertainty triggers fear, which your brain is designed to avoid at all costs. So even when you are presented with an opportunity to change, to do something different, and to finally break the cycle, your mind starts to resist. It begins to question the new path, asking what if it does not work, what if you fail again, and what if you are making the wrong decision? And just like that, you find yourself returning to what you already know, even when that choice continues to hold you back. Now let's talk about another force that plays a huge role in this cycle, something that most people never even consider: emotional addiction. Not an addiction to substances, but an addiction to certain emotional states that you have become used to over time. You can become addicted to stress, to drama, to chaos, and to the emotional highs and lows that come with those experiences. Because your body becomes accustomed to those chemical reactions, and over time, they start to feel normal to you. So when your life becomes calm, stable, or peaceful, instead of feeling comfortable, it can actually feel strange or even uncomfortable. And without realizing it, you begin to create situations that bring back those familiar emotions, whether it is through overthinking, engaging in conflict, or returning to environments that trigger those feelings. This does not happen consciously, but rather as an automatic response driven by your system's desire to feel what it recognizes as normal. And that is why breaking these cycles can feel so difficult, because you are not just changing your actions, but also shifting patterns that have been reinforced at a deeper level for a long time. But here is the good news, and it is important that you understand this clearly. Once you become aware of the pattern, you gain the ability to interrupt it. And that is where real change begins. Because awareness gives you power over something that previously controlled you without your knowledge. Most people go through life on autopilot, repeating the same behaviors without ever questioning why they are doing what they are doing. But the moment you pause and ask yourself why you are about to repeat the same mistake again, you create a gap between the impulse and the action. And within that gap, something powerful happens. You gain the ability to choose. Not react automatically, but consciously decide what you will do next. Now let's make this practical, because understanding these ideas is one thing, but applying them is what truly makes a difference. The first step requires complete honesty with yourself, even if it feels uncomfortable. You need to clearly identify the pattern that you keep repeating, being specific rather than vague so that you can truly see it for what it is. Then ask yourself an important question, which is what you are gaining from this behavior. Because every repeated action provides some kind of reward, even if that reward is negative or temporary. It might give you comfort, distraction, or a way to avoid something more challenging. But there is always something that keeps you coming back. And until you recognize that hidden reward, you will continue to repeat the same cycle. Now here is where the shift happens. Instead of trying to eliminate the behavior completely, focus on replacing the reward with something healthier that provides a similar feeling without the negative consequences. Because if you simply try to remove the habit, your brain will resist. But if you redirect it, your brain becomes more willing to adapt. Next, you need to break the loop connected to your identity. Stop telling yourself that this is just who you are, because that belief will keep you trapped in the same patterns. Instead, start viewing these behaviors as something you have done, not something that defines you as a person. That small shift creates distance between you and the behavior, and within that distance, you begin to regain control. Now let's address something that many people underestimate: your environment. You cannot expect to change if everything around you continues to reinforce the version of you that you are trying to leave behind. The same people, the same routines, the same triggers, and the same distractions will keep pulling you back into old habits. It is like trying to eat healthy while constantly surrounding yourself with junk food. Your environment will always be stronger than your willpower if you do not make intentional changes. So if you are serious about breaking the cycle, you need to adjust what is around you, even in small ways, because those changes can interrupt the pattern and create new possibilities. Now consider this powerful question. What would the version of you who has already solved this problem actually do in this situation? Not what they would think, but what actions they would take. Because thinking alone does not create change, but action does. And the more you begin to act like that version of yourself, the more your identity starts to shift over time. Until eventually, those new behaviors feel natural instead of forced. Now here is the truth that most people do not want to accept. You will fail again at some point. Even after understanding all of this, even after making an effort to change, you will have moments where you fall back into old patterns. But this time, it is different. Because now you are aware of what is happening, and that awareness shortens the cycle. Instead of being stuck for months, you begin to catch yourself in days, then in hours, and eventually in the moment itself, until the pattern gradually loses its power over you. And you break free, not because you became perfect, but because you became conscious. Now imagine what your life could look like if you were no longer controlled by the same habits and patterns that have been holding you back. Imagine making decisions that actually move you forward, and finally being able to trust yourself to follow through. That is what becomes possible when you break the cycle. But it all starts with a single decision, and that decision has to happen now. The next time you feel the urge to repeat the same mistake, pause for a moment and ask yourself a simple but powerful question. Is this who I want to be? Because that question alone has the power to change everything. And if this message made you see things differently, then do not ignore it. Use it. Because most people will hear something like this, feel motivated for a short time, and then go right back to the same patterns. But you have the opportunity to choose differently, starting right now.